According to OmahaZoo.com in an article from September 2018, the Henry Doorly Zoo has had over 50 million visitors since they started recording attendance in 1966. AZA.org says that over 181 million people visit zoos annually. This is more visitors than the NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL all combined annual attendance. I personally have visited both the Henry Doorly Zoo and the Lincoln Zoo multiple times, and I have done much research in preparation for this speech. Despite this, zoos are not what people see on the outside. They put animals in small cages or areas that are not sufficient size for them. They breed endangered species only to sell the babies to other zoos, and they contain many other problems. However, there are some ways we can improve our zoos. First, we'll go over the conditions that animals are subject to when living in zoos. Animals are often put in enclosures or cages that don't fit their natural environmental characteristics. Sure, you may be thinking that some animals have huge enclosures, and they might seem huge to us, but how is a 10,000 meter by 10,000 meter area big enough for an African elephant that on average walks 50 miles a day in the wild? According to animallib.org, there was a study conducted in which people were put into a human zoo for a week. They were placed in an outdoor orangutan enclosure, and once placed in there, there was almost an immediate complaint by everybody about how hot it was. The problem wasn't just the heat, however. Animals are often given a diet that isn't sufficient or is just plain. There's usually no variety in the food that the animals are given. And sometimes they aren't even given food that would be part of their diet in the wild. Also, animals aren't fed the same way that they would get food in the wild. For example, big cats like tigers and lions get given a slab of meat, when in the wild they are used to hunting for their food and having to chase it down. It has been found that the way food is presented has a direct impact on animal welfare. The animals are also usually fed once or twice a day, when in the wild they use all the hours they are awake to feed. Because of this, their digestive tracts are used to always having a supply of food, not getting fed just once a day. Another issue is the inbreeding in zoos. This is because of the plain lack of diversity in the animals. This causes an increase in mortality among the babies born in zoos. The animals aren't able to get out and mate with other animals outside of their group or area like they are in the wild. Animals held in captivity have been known to show stress, boredom, loneliness, and frustration, which goes to show how unhealthy their minds are. The animals' welfare is also diminished by the fact that they are on display and are forced into close proximity with humans. Because of all these things, animals have a shorter life expectancy in zoos on average. For example, the African elephant lifespans are about 17 years in zoos, where they're closer to 36 to 40 years in the wild, according to an article written by Curiosity.com in 2015. Some may argue that animals live longer in captivity, and sometimes they're right. Some animals do live longer on average due to the fact that they have no natural predators in captivity. If the animals lived in the wild and had no predators, they would undoubtedly live longer than animals in a zoo with no predators. Orcas' lifespans in captivity are shortened by around 80 years. In the wild, they can expect to be 100 years old, but at SeaWorld, their reported average lifespan is only about 13 years. A lot of humans live close to be 100 years old, so it's easy to compare this drastic change. Just imagine if the human life expectancy was only 13 years. Next, we'll look at the breeding that zoos perform and how it isn't what the public thinks. Although captive breeding programs can help species from going extinct, the downside of these programs outweigh the benefits. To start with, zoos often breed too many animals that they don't have room for. So, in turn, they end up selling them anywhere from the meat industry to circuses to other zoos. Some may say that natural selection or survival of the fittest was killing off these species for a reason, while others believe it's best to save them. Also, inbreeding can become a problem in zoos since there is a limited gene pool. This leads to less diverse individuals and, in turn, weaker genes. A lot of times, zoos will capture the last few individuals of a species in order to breed them. However, this means that they're taking away from the wild population, and which means, in some cases, that they could even cause an extinction of the wild. Even though there are still some animals left of a certain species, they are captive, not in the wild. In most cases, when this happens, the zoos end up never reintroducing the animals with a fear of the animal becoming endangered and extinct again. Another issue with reintroducing animals into the wild is that since they have spent so much time being around humans, once they're put back into the wild, they could be too comfortable and confident around humans. The animals become dependent on us and forget their nature and how to survive in their land. Another issue is that once the species are reintroduced, they prefer to only breed with other reintroduced animals, not wild ones. Brendan Slade from the University of Melbourne performed an experiment with mice to show this trend. Under all control conditions, 83% of offspring were produced from same-source parents, meaning that 83% of the offspring were from either both wild parents or both reintroduced parents. This is called assortative mating and means that there are strong preferences of mice to mate with their own kind. Finally, I want to talk about some ways that we can fix our problems in our zoos. First things first, zoos need not to focus on entertainment, but instead on the conservation of wildlife, with the entertainment area existing solely for adequate funding to keep the animals alive and thriving. Another way that zoos can improve the lives of animals is to give them more room and better enclosures that are closer to their natural habitats. Many animals, like tigers and lions, are put in cages that are nowhere near big enough for them. Think about how much room a lion has to roam in its natural habitat. Compared to this, the cage they're put in is basically nothing for them. As Elizabeth Turnbull said in an article called Top 10 Problems with Zoos from 2016, zoos are not a resort for exotic animals, zoos are jail. A lot of times people will put the blame on poachers and hunters for the reason that animals need to be in zoos. But why has no one thought that instead of blaming the poachers and displacing the animals, why don't we punish the poachers more heavily and leave the animals where they belong, in the wild? Finally, I'll bring up the point of education or entertainment. Zoos try to portray the image that they are all about education, and honestly maybe they are, but the visitors show it. If you think about it, have you or anyone you know actually gone to the zoo for the sole reason of learning about the animals? I would say the majority of the people would say no. For this, I think zoos need to try harder to get through to younger kids. They should incorporate more interactive learning and let the people be hands-on, because that will make them learn more. In conclusion, animals are very important to our world. And yes, it is important to learn about them and conserve them in every way possible, but we need to find better ways to do so. As you can see, zoos are not what people see on the outside. They put animals in small cages or areas that aren't a sufficient size for them. They breed endangered species only to sell the babies to other zoos, and they have many other problems. However, there are ways to fix the problems, but I'll leave it up to you to decide. And are zoos more worried about the conservation of animals or just trying to make some money in morally questionable ways? I don't know about you, but I know you won't see me at a zoo anytime soon.